Hi.
Hello.
Look at us. Oh,
Live on stream.
you're on. What'd you say?
I said we're live on stream.
We're live on screen. I know. I just realized I needed to click out of my LinkedIn because I think there was like feedback coming through. Okay. Can I tell you why I'm so excited? Is because, first of all, we have our little fire.
Very important.
It's very important for a fireside chat, I think.
Yeah.
I'm so excited because now you have to acknowledge me on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I wonder if people get it when you. Oh, also, by the way, I checked my notifications like yesterday, and you had posted about this, and I didn't.
Oh,
I
yeah.
didn't do anything.
You just casually, like, why would you tell anybody about the fact that you work for Motivo? So for our listeners or people who might be listening to this later, I have to say, I'm super nice about Mike on social media. I like anytime it's like his birthday or a Motivo anniversary for him, I'm just like, I am so proud and excited to be building this company with you. And you never respond. I don't even think you like it.
Well, it's not only that I never respond. When I do respond, it's extremely like lukewarm.
Yeah.
Um,
Like you don't even
but
care.
it is like well, I'm leaning into it because you hate it so much.
Mm-hmm.
But I've just always been like a very private person, and it's like I'm not used to having like any kind of social media presence. So even like what we're doing right now, I don't know how many people are like watching or anything like that, but I generally find it to be pretty nerve wracking. Whereas I think you're like quite a natural at it. So the yeah, yes, it's like you're in your element.
Yes.
So yeah, for anything LinkedIn related, I'm just like I'll see it when I see it. But I know that you're very good at LinkedIn. And you write very meaningful messages,
That
and
mean
I do
nothing
not.
to you.
Yeah, and I do not. So
Well, this is your opportunity to set the record straight on this fireside chat and be like, wow, I love working with Rachel McCrickard. She's like my favorite person.
I plan to.
Yeah, I hope you do. Okay, well, thank you so much for doing this. I've been doing a lot of LinkedIn Lives lately with Dr. Carla, our Chief Clinical Officer. We've been doing our Digging Deep podcast, but this is like our first opportunity to be on LinkedIn Live together. And I'm super excited because one of the things that I've been noticing is that people seem to be very interested in not just like, what does Motivo do and the problem that we solve, but like, what's your journey to like creating a company and founding a startup and all of that sort of stuff. And I've just like learned a lot from you. We've learned a lot together. So I thought maybe we could just chat about that journey together. So we can kick it off with intros. Why don't you start and just share your name, what you do at Motivo, and where you live, maybe. And I thought of one other one too, like something that is bringing you lots of joy lately.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm Mike. I have been at Motivo for just under 3 years. So 2020, September 2020. And I'm the CTO and co-founder of Motivo. So I build, my team builds the product, and we, we're responsible for the supervision product, the Motivo for Employers product, and everything internal. There's a lot of like internal operational tooling that we build as well. So I'm dialing in out of sunny Seattle, in Washington, and something that's bringing me a lot of joy right now is I have a 2.5-year-old who is named Liam, and he's very talkative now. And we were just talking about how every little corner of the house has like a little Liam trademark phrase that he says, and so a lot of the stuff around the house just reminds us of him when he's at daycare. So it's been pretty fun phase of life for us.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that. I just got to meet him like a month ago, and he really is like the cutest little kid in the world. By the way, is it sunny in Seattle right now, or no? You're joking.
Very sunny in Seattle. Yeah. It's been extremely sunny and hot. Like the summer is like incredible here. And then like 9 to 10 months out of the year is like gloomy and dreadful.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And I'm Rachel McCrickard. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and also the CEO and co-founder for Motivo. I live in Richmond, Virginia, where my husband is from. And we moved here a couple of years ago and we love it. Something that's bringing me joy. I mean, you could probably know it's my dogs, Lucy and Wrigley. And if they make an appearance in here, I'll definitely bring them on screen because they're the cutest Boston Terriers in the world. And I love them. Also, I would say what's bringing me joy is this salmon recipe that I've been making lately. It's like Vietnamese caramel salmon. And it's like the best thing in the world. I should drop it in the show notes in case anybody wants it. So let's see. What we want to do is kind of start by talking about like why we wanted to do this this fireside chat. So as I mentioned earlier, I think a lot of therapists, are entrepreneurs as well. They are starting their own business. They're starting their own private practice. One of the things that happens in grad school is you don't get a lot of training on how to build a business, how to build a budget, how to market your private practice, any of those types of things. So you kind of have to like learn by doing as a private practice clinician. And that's been very similar to my journey as well, of just like learning how to do it from a perspective of just like figuring it out as I go. One thing that's kind of true of like the startup industry in general is that most of the big tech companies were started with a CTO, a chief technology officer, on the founding team, right? So either the idea originated from the CTO, because you can think about it as like, this is the CTO is the person who, if they have the idea, they also have everything they need to build a software product. I didn't. So I came into the industry with an idea, but no kind of knowledge of how to build the product, which, has its own kind of struggle and hardship on that side of things. But I would say what I did have is like a very deep knowledge and understanding of the customer problem. And for us, that is clinical supervision. I, resonated with that. I experienced it myself. It was born out of my own, struggle. So those are some of the things that we want to talk about today. Let me just ask you, Mike, why what are you excited about with the fireside chat? What did you want to bring to it?
Yeah, sure. I think, I think there's some skepticism in like around like big tech these days, and I feel like it's pretty rare for companies to be able to see, or customers in general to be able to see like who's building the products that they're using. I think it's probably more common these days than before, like a lot of podcast appearances and stuff like that. But I always think it's good to be able to see like who are these people and like what are their values. And so I thought it would be a good opportunity to, pull back the curtain a little bit and let people see a little bit about how Motivo is run and like who's running it. And so I'm excited to kind of like present a different, I definitely consider Rachel, you to be the face of Motivo in so many ways. But I would love for people to see a little bit more about like how Motivo's being run and, how the decisions are being made.
Yeah. And you're such an intricate part of that as well. And maybe we can get into that a little bit in the sense of like why and I think someone was just asking me this the other day, like, why did you even have a co-founder? I mean, I really got the company off the ground, mostly by myself in those very early days. And I could have just hired an engineer to build the product and then, grow that to a team of engineers. But, I was really drawn to the idea of like having a partner on this journey. It can be like a very isolating thing to build and run a company, mainly just because, you have to make a lot of important decisions where there isn't always like a very clear yes or a very clear no. And so I just wanted someone that I really trusted their intuition and their emotional intelligence to just like help me on this journey. And that has definitely been you.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And I think we've had to make a lot of difficult decisions during our time here. It hasn't been that long, but there have been a lot of tough calls. And I can't imagine like the emotional burden of doing that alone. So I'm glad I'm here. I'm glad, we're doing this together.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. So let's talk about the early days a little bit. I know you have had some thoughts on just like the original beta product that I created. You want to share some thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, like, I think when I talk about, the foundation of this company, I feel very, in a non-condescending way, proud of you for doing what you were able to do with no technical background, So a lot of times people pitch an idea to me. Like, it's a classic like trope with software engineers. People pitch an idea. They're like, "Hey, can you build this thing? I have this great idea. Build this thing for me, and we'll do, and I'll take 50%." Right? Like, that's not you at all. Like, you saw this problem and you weren't like, "I sure wish someone could build this for me. I'm just this, person distressed." But instead you actually you went and built like the first phase of it, and you showed that you're willing to kind of like get your hands dirty, and do what you had to do to try and solve this problem. And so that's always been a point of, like, I think, like, I wouldn't be able to partner with anyone who just is like, "Oh, you do the thing and you build it." So yeah, I would love to hear a little bit more about, kind of the details around how you got started.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question, because I think there's a lot of like founders out there that, are potential founders that have an idea about a way that I honestly kind of think I'll talk about like Paul Graham, who is the founder of Y Combinator, and he was teaching this group of entrepreneurs in graduate school several years ago. And one kid asked him, like, how do I come up with that idea, that like great business idea that's going to make me lots and lots of money and that's going to serve a lot of people? And he said, you're going about it the wrong way. Like, go and learn a trade and then figure out like what are the problems and gaps that exist in that particular industry, and then like you'll have your answer. So I think that, that my origin story very much comes from a place of experiencing the problem myself and knowing that, I had an idea about what the solution could be. And for me, it was a very much like, predicated, is that a word, by like, rules and licensure rules and regulations changing, me noticing that you could do virtual supervision now and thinking like this would be a great way to solve an issue for other people like me who experienced hardship in clinical supervision. So another like known term in the technology community is MVP, which doesn't stand for most valuable player. It stands for minimum viable product, which means like, what is the simplest solution that you can create and get in the hands of users to just even test if people would want what you're creating? So I created something like that. Actually, it was like my husband, his job, he was working for like a carpet flooring company, and they were using Shopify to create a new website of products to sell. And I was like, oh, it's like so easy. You can like just create a Shopify account. I'll just create a Shopify account and put a bunch of supervisor profiles on it. And people can, request to meet with that supervisor. It'll come to me, and then I'll do a Zoom call with them and match the people together. So that's kind of how it was very much like run on spreadsheets, me just kind of like matching people together based on that Shopify site. And, I wouldn't have thought that was impressive. I actually thought that's how technology companies always started. Like, I was like, isn't this just what you do? So it worked. And, we started getting more and more interest and growing in revenue just on that product. And it was enough to kind of give investors or advisors around us confidence that we had something that was worth putting more money into.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, that concept of like minimum viable product and kind of the way that I would describe the way that you built the early stage of Motivo is this a methodology called lean methodology. Is very like bare bones, and no frills. And it's like just intended to solve the core problem and to see if people are actually going to be willing to use it and pay for it. Because, you can do a lot of user research, and ask people, is this a real problem? You knew it was a real problem, right? But like the solution that you built, people are gonna lie to you, like, they're not gonna, they're gonna be, oh, that sounds great. That sounds like a great idea. Put me on the mailing list, and then they won't buy. They won't buy it the day it comes out. The only way to really really know if it's going to be a thing that people use, is to get it in their hands. And that's exactly what you did. So I definitely think that's something to be proud of.
Yeah, I mean, I would be proud too if it was like intentional, but like I'm like, oh, the lean startup, that's what it was. But no, I really just like didn't know any better, and I think that I would say has been like one of my superpowers as a founder, is being okay with the fact that I didn't know anything, and being like, willing to ask questions. Like, I very much from always have been like a learner of, I don't know, but I'm willing to go and try to find it out or talk to people who've done this before. I think that has served me really well.
Agreed. Agreed. It has. So yeah, tell me a little bit more about those early years. I feel like there's, I think we've talked a little bit about this throughout our time working together. But specifically, what were like the stickiest parts of kind of the earliest years of Motivo?
Yeah, it wasn't easy. I am having a lot more fun now than I did in those early days. And I think it's because, I remember hearing this quote that's like, do what you have to do until you can do what you want to do. And so in the early days, it was just like I had to do everything that I wasn't good at, finance and hiring and marketing and sales and customer support. I mean, technology, of course. Like, there were so many aspects of the business that I knew I really didn't know what I was doing. And I had to learn mostly through like doing it wrong, just I can remember like some of the early like product decisions that we made were around like, what Motivo needed to be able to do from a technical perspective if it was serving like 10 billion people, right? And it's like, we don't need to be focusing on that. We just need to get to the next little step of what the product needs to be able to do and kind of grow it from that perspective. So there were just a lot of mistakes that I made there. And I would say that, I mostly learned by getting it wrong. But what made me still want to do it is I remember this one moment of just like driving down the road in Chattanooga, Tennessee, where I lived. And I just remember thinking to myself, like, if I don't do it, I'm going to always wonder what would have happened. And I had enough people around me, 2 or 3 friends who were saying like, I think that's actually a really good idea. I think you should try it. I also think, I just want to kind of also acknowledge like my own privilege in that situation. I was in a situation where I was married. My husband had a very good job. Our expenses we didn't have kids, like none of that sort of stuff. So we could really live on one income, which was my husband's income, for a couple of years while I tried to get the company off the ground. So it was a risk that was like, we were able to take at a place in our life. And I just felt like, why not try, And I also feel like I was okay with the outcome being like massive failure. Like, I was okay with I think that I would have regretted more never trying than trying and failing. So those were some of the pieces that just, kind of helped me be able to do it. But as I look back now, and this is something that I think as well, there's a lot of investors who prefer to invest in founders who've done it before, who've had, like, so you see on LinkedIn sometimes like 2x founder or 3x founder, because I think it's because the learning curve in starting a company is so steep that you learn so much that you would have done differently. And I feel like if I were to start Motivo today, I'd get to this place in half the time, just because of all the lessons that I've learned along the way. But they were hard and they were lonely, and didn't have somebody to bounce ideas off of. Oftentimes didn't have someone who was like really, truly like in the trenches with me from day to day. And as the team began to build and we got more and more advisors, investors, and then co-founder, all of that just started to come together in a better way. Yeah,
for sure. Did you ever, you're talking about like the time when you decided to go all in on this. Why this problem? Like, why? I know I think many people who are listening to this have probably heard your founding story. Were there any other, like, being a therapist is hard. Like, it's just like there's so many problems that therapists deal with. Was there a reason why you decided on supervision rather than any other problem that a therapist could be facing?
That's a good question. And I don't think if anyone has ever asked me that before. I think that I probably was more entrepreneurial than I give myself credit for. My brother had started a whiskey company in Chattanooga, called Chattanooga Whiskey Company. And I had started alongside it this thing called the Whiskey Women, that was like women who just got together and I had to go through this whole pitch competition to present the Whiskey Women. In my other jobs that I had before I came to Motivo, I was, usually the one who was kind of coming up with creative ideas and stuff. So I think that it was just, when I saw that the rules had changed for virtual supervision, I was like, that fits, like it's a problem I experienced myself. Here's the solution. And I think that I probably could notice that there was enough saturation, even at that time in 2018, of like digital health solutions. Like there was something in me that said, like, what, don't create just another solution. Because I think my ability to like create a better solution of something that already existed today is probably not good. I think I'm better at just creating like a brand new idea that hadn't been thought of yet.
Yeah. And I think it's, that there hasn't been that many people trying to solve this particular problem, even, since the time that I joined Motivo. So I think it was a good one. It was a good one to pick.
Yeah, it's probably the last good one I'll have, I think.
You keep saying that, but I don't know. I don't know if that's true.
We'll see. Well, okay, I want to ask you in the hot seat for a minute here. Like, you have had such an impressive career. You have been, a great software engineer for a lot of incredible companies like Google, Airbnb, Yahoo, and then a stint at another startup. What made you decide to come to Motivo? Kind of walk me through that.
Yeah, so I was not planning to stay here at all, and I think you knew that as you tried to talk me into staying here.
Mhm.
So I was referred to Motivo through a friend, our former COO Sarah, who let me know that Motivo was kind of struggling on the engineering side. You just let go of your former head of engineering. And there was a lot to do on the engineering side. So came here. My intention after leaving Airbnb was to basically do consulting, just to kind of be a gun for hire, and to try to carve out a niche for myself in some kind of space. And like I was just kind of in this exploratory phase where I was trying consulting for a bit and not really sure what I wanted to do. And then when I got here, I was like, oh, there's a lot of problems that I could fix, and I could have like a pretty big impact here if I were to stick around. And so I kind of had this choice of whether or not to do what I came to do, which is just like do like a 3 to 6 month stint and try to fix like the most high impact problems. And then get out and figure out what else to do, or I could decide to stick around. And what I learned from being here is that I really liked working with you. I think like I had never imagined myself working for a mental health company. I do have like a good inclination towards the industry. Like I've had therapists in the past before, and they played a pretty integral part of my life in terms of like my ability to regulate myself. Especially now that I'm a dad. That skill set has become really important after learning how to meditate, learning how to kind of like yeah. So it's had a very big impact on me, just this field, and so I see the importance of it. And but still, I had never imagined myself like kind of like veering in that direction until I came here. And so I was like, really like working with Rachel. I feel like we're making a pretty big impact in the world. This mental health crisis has only gotten worse since the time that I got here. And when it comes to like making a mark on the world, I could do worse. And I think I feel even more strongly that this is important work that we're doing. And yeah, so started as a consultant, kept having conversations about whether to stay full time, and then you convinced me to do it, and then we started having conversations about co-founder, and it just made sense. So I just so much of it was our working dynamic. I just felt like I have a lot of disillusionment with kind of like technology and like working in general, but I really felt like you were trying to build the kind of company that I would want to build. And so I felt like our values really aligned in terms of just both what we're trying to do, like with the product that we're building, like how we're pretty unwilling to compromise on any ethical decisions for profit, and also how we want to treat our employees. So those are two really key things that I feel like we're just lockstep on. I don't think we've ever really deviated on those things.
No, agreed. I love that. My friend got this like fireside chat invite the other day, and she like turned to me. She was like, "Yeah, but he wasn't like the founder. He was like a co-founder. He like didn't start it with you." And I was like, "No, he didn't." But like, and I think people, that's kind of a misconception sometimes, is like people think like that your co-founder needs to start with you. And if I would have picked co-founders when I didn't know anything, they probably wouldn't have been like Mike Chen, they would have been just like the random WordPress developer that I could find, that I could be like, "Hey, do you want to come and do this?" I didn't know what I needed then. But what I define as a co-founder is somebody who the company wouldn't be the same company without them. And that is exactly how I feel about you. I feel like you have had a co-founder level value on the company, not just from the technology side. The technology side, obviously like slam dunk. You've done an incredible job with the product, but that kind of ethical, moral compass piece of like us checking in on, because it can be challenging out there. And I'm sure a lot of people who might be listening can think of like the way that venture capital has hurt humanity in terms of the products that, the decisions that have been made when, growth at all cost is kind of like the mantra. And so having someone who is like, where we can keep each other grounded in the right decisions, I feel like it's good for everybody. It builds a better business. It's better for our employees and customers. It's just better all around. It's better for the world, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think there have been a lot of companies I've worked for that have a very attractive sounding mission. And when you get there, it's like, just another company. It's just another company that's trying to make money. And I think, it's important that we make money. Like if we don't make money, then we won't be able to do anything. Like the company will shut down, and that'll be it. And so that is important. But like in the end, our values, I think, drive all the decisions that we make, regardless of, like I think, profit and all that plays a part in it. But if you're always sacrificing your values for profit, you don't have any values. And so, and I think that's how a lot of companies operate.
Yeah, I agree. So another question I wanted to ask along those same lines is like, as you think about like what the product looked like when you first walked in, and this might be helpful to other founders who might be thinking about like, what do they need in a product? What do you think some like maybe non-technical early stage founders get wrong when they're building a product?
Yeah, I think, when I got here, there was a lot of stuff happening manually. And kind of my whole like ethos around computers is let the computer do the things that computers are good at, and let the humans do the things that the humans are good at, right? So what are humans good at? Like just building relationships, making people feel seen and heard. What are computers doing good at is repetitive stuff, like copying and pasting stuff from one spreadsheet into another spreadsheet should not be what a human is doing for very long. That's a very big waste of human capital. And so I think I wouldn't say that you did anything wrong in this aspect, but I think the hard part is always around like finding the right balance between like when to stop doing things that don't scale. Like you mentioned Paul Graham earlier. One of his most famous sayings is do things that don't scale, which is like, sometimes like you have to just like get into Google spreadsheet and match people manually.
Mhm.
And then later on, maybe you build like a whole algorithm around it and the computer can do the matching for you, right? But for a long time, maybe you have to do the matching yourself, right? It's really like kind of feeling out what's the right time to move this to an automation. What's the right time to start like operationalizing some of this work? And I would say like Motivo probably erred a little bit too far on the side of like let's figure this out later. And so a lot of what I've been doing in the past couple of years has been kind of like walking that back and like kind of automating a lot of the stuff that should have been automated. Not should have been, not like, again, not a mistake. Just it was time. It was time for us to do that. And so I think like that's just the caution is like I also you can automate too far on the other side too. Like you can automate too early, and then maybe you've automated the wrong process, right? So it's a really fine line. There's no science behind it. It's really just like art. And I think this is like one of the things that you mentioned. A second-time founder is probably going to be a lot better at this than the first-time founder.
Yeah, I think it's such a great point that you bring up too, because it's interesting that I hired a COO, Sarah, who we both know and love so much. Before I hired a CTO, it was like my decision to solve we're burning this person out on this process was to hire another person. And Sarah came in and could very quickly and easily see like, no, these are things that technology can fix, and I just thought, well, I got to hire another person to do that.
Yeah. And, I think we were already hitting the point when I got here where there weren't enough humans to do those pieces of work. And so, yeah, I feel like the burnout risk for our operations employees is just much lower than it was before. And I think that's a real danger, is like kind of burning out employees more than wasting money,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah. So I'm curious about the name Motivo. I think I've heard the story, and I think like we're kind of entering this new phase of Motivo as a company. And I'm really curious if you could share how you came up with the name. Were there any other names that you were considering? And what does the name mean to you now? Like how has the meaning of the name changed, if at all?
Great question. Yeah, Motivo. So I had originally, when I started the company, the name was LMFT Connect. It's awful, but like it was because I'm an LMFT, a licensed marriage and family therapist. I was connecting them to other supervisors. And what I learned really quickly was it's not just licensed marriage and family therapists who struggle with the supervision problem. It's social workers, it's counselors, it's addiction counselors, it's psychologists, it's behavior analysts. There's a whole host of other mental health professionals who are, required to get this clinical supervision. So we couldn't have something that was like so acronym specific. So Warren, my husband, and I started trying to think. And, one of the other just like real practical challenges of naming a company is that there's no URLs available. It's like supervision.com is not available, So anything that just like made sense, like from a very practical standpoint, we had to think about it in a different way. And so my husband was like scrolling, like looking this up late one night, just trying to help. We had like a whole list of just different ideas. And he came across this word Motivo. And we had just gotten back from Portugal, which is like for a vacation. We loved it there. He really loved Portugal. And he saw that in Portuguese, Motivo means foundation. And I really loved that. I loved the idea that clinical supervision is kind of the foundation of a clinician's practice. These are like the early years that you're learning how to become a good therapist. And so it just fit for me. I loved it. I loved it right off the bat. I hate it when people say Motivo, but when people get it right and say Motivo, I love it. To your other question on other names, one of the other names that stuck out to me was gatekeeper, which now I'm just like, oh my God, that would have been awful. But clinicians will know what I mean by that, because supervisors are told that they are to be the gatekeepers of the profession, meaning that your job as a clinical supervisor is to make sure that this young clinician, this new clinician coming into the field is ready, and that you're there to like make sure that happens and recommend them to the board basically and say this person is ready to see patients on their own. So but gatekeeper felt a little aggressive. Like, I don't know, would you have come worked for us if we were called Gatekeeper?
I think Gatekeeper, yeah, like we were just talking pre this stream about how Gatekeeper is normally a bad thing, right? Like, I mean, I think like, from an industry standards perspective, it makes a lot of sense, but like probably externally, it's pretty harsh sounding.
Yeah. Gatekeeper.com. I mean, who doesn't
Was it available?
I'm
I bet it
sure it's
wasn't
not
available.
available.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so let me just say this. One of my favorite things about working with you, I'm just being conscious of the time because I want to get to some of these other questions. One of my favorite things about working with you is that you are dead set on making Motivo a really great place to work. You want it to be a culture that, and of course I do as well, but like you particularly have had so many ideas, like the pet insurance that we're doing and lots of other different just creative ideas like that are like, how can we take the best care of our employees? Can you talk a little bit about why that's so important to you?
Yeah, I think part of this comes from like my entitled tech background. Just gotta be, like we're talking about privilege before. I'm pretty privileged. Like, and I didn't even get into tech for the money. I didn't know that it was so lucrative when I got into it. Like, I was just, I like doing this, and it seems great. And then I found out that you can make eye-popping salaries from it. And so, I kind of come from this background where um, I'm used to being pampered at work, and I think in a bad way. Oftentimes, I think it like leads to a lot of entitlement. Just to tell you a quick story from my time at Airbnb, like we went from like, so we got free food at Airbnb, and at one point we went vegetarian only on Wednesdays. So we called it Meatless Wednesdays, and people threw a fit. People threw a fit about it. How they're just trying to cut costs and stuff like that.
How dare they?
And I'm like, do you hear yourselves right now? Like, and then after the pandemic hit and everyone started working from home, people started talking. Oh, can I expense my lunch? I'm like, your company already pays for your lunch. They pay you an enormous salary.
Yes.
And you could go take that money and buy your lunch.
Yep.
And so I never want to get that far. Like, I never want to get. I never want us to be like, oh yeah, you like. And I think a lot of people think that like the tech perks are very manipulative. Like they do that so that you'll spend more time at work and that they'll own more of your life. And that's not why I want people to feel taken care of either. But I do feel like people's time is the most precious resource that they have. Like, it's non-renewable. Like, and they're giving us, 40-ish hours a week. And what can we do to honor that? Right. Mm-hmm. And so the way that I think about, like as a leader and as a manager, I think about like retention. That's like my primary job. Our primary jobs as leaders is to really think about like, both vision setting and also retention of employees. But the way I think about retention of employees is not like, oh, how do I manipulate people into staying here? Like, I just like my goal is to make Motivo the most attractive option for them to work. Mm-hmm. Right. And so there's a lot of these like little things that we can do for them to show that like, we care. Like, the pet insurance is one great example of, I don't know, like 90% of Motivo employees are dog owners. And, what's something unique that we can offer them to say, hey, thank you for your time. Thank you for being here, and for giving some of the best years of your career to Motivo and for helping us build this thing, and so, yeah, that's how I think about retention is like, I want people to, like, ideally people's goals for their career and like where they get value out of that intersects with what we need from them. Right. And that's when I want people to be here, and not for like a second longer. So yeah, that's how I think about, kind of culture and retention.
I love that. I would love to just even mention for, founders who might be listening and thinking like, what else has Mike brought? I'll just mention a couple of them. Another one is something called menstruation leave that Mike and I both saw on LinkedIn. We were like, that's interesting, and it's really just saying like, we recognize that employees who have a uterus, like, need a week each month, or have a week each month that they show up differently to work, and they feel differently. So we, obviously we're not giving our employees a full week off for that, but we're just saying like, hey, we recognize that you might need to go a little slower today, and that's like just fine with us, and you're welcome to do so. So that's one, mandatory PTO versus like, there's this big kind of thing around unlimited PTO right now, which sometimes results in people just never taking time off. The only one who doesn't do that at Motivo is Mike. But other than that, most people are about
I knew
taking
it was going to come up. I knew it was going to come up because I am technically on PTO right now.
You're so bad at it. You're so bad at it.
I'm not modeling it well.
You're not modeling it well. You're really not. But, mandatory PTO is saying, hey, you got to take some time to care about yourself, rest and recharge. We know that that's important to the business. So I love how you've brought so many of those things. So the other thing I want to talk about is like, I know that the statistics say that one of the number one reasons that startups fail is because of co-founder conflict. And so I want to talk a little bit about like why we think that this co-founder fit has been so good. Why do you think our partnership works well?
I think a lot of it is just like a really deep, genuine respect for each other. I thought about this in terms of like, what if, like I would rather leave the company than something bad happened to you, right? Like I would take a career bullet for you, because I just feel like you're the heart and soul of this company. Like I think like without your like ethical knowledge about this field, there's not much we could do, so I would, like, I think that's part of it. I think also we complement each other well. So I am a very cynical person, and you are a very optimistic person, and I think that balances out quite well. Just like you want to, like, even right now we're trying to do something very, very hard, and I don't know, like, if you were like me, we wouldn't be doing it because I would just be like, oh, that's too hard, we can't do that. Like the way that we're trying to engage with like clinical quality is so in depth and so something that has never been done before, and I'm like, it sounds impossible, but you're gonna make us do it. And so that is, I think that's a big part of it. I think also in terms of just like, kind of our disposition towards like what are the interesting problems. I really like kind of like looking internally, looking at kind of the team culture, our management culture, our leadership culture, our operations and things like that. Like we have other people to do that now, but before we did, it was I was thinking about all that a lot, and those are kind of like the satisfying things for me. And you've been, so much like the vision casting and like being the face of the company and selling the crap out of the company. And I can't think of a better fit than those two skill sets, and like we don't, and because of that, we don't really step on each other's toes either. Like I'm never fighting with you about how we should do sales, and you're never fighting with me how we should do operations, right? So that's my take. I would love to hear yours.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that. I think, I completely agree. I think there's also like an interest in doing our own self-work. I mean, you talked about going to therapy. I go to therapy. Like there is a lot of, internal work that has to happen in order to be like a good communicator and be able to kind of show up authentically, to be able to communicate directly and clearly, but with kindness. Like that doesn't just like happen. And I find it to be, quite hard and something that I struggled with for a number of years. But I think because of the work that we have both done, interpersonally in our own lives, like it's easier to show up to work that way because of that. I think about, the phrase in AA is like sweeping your own side of the street. And I feel like there's when we have like difficult conversations or areas that we disagree on, because that happens sometimes, I feel like there's always like, help me like understand your perspective on this, versus like any kind of like passive aggressive or accusatory or just any of those kinds of things. It just never really comes up. It's more like assuming good intent, and I think that has to do with the respect that you mentioned. Like, I think I would always assume good intent for you. I also just wanted to mention too, like I love the analogy or the metaphor of like Lincoln's team of rivals, that President Lincoln had like a group of like his cabinet who like disagreed with him. And I think it's very dangerous for any politician to have just like people around them that completely agree with them. I think it's horrible for a CEO to have people around her that just completely agree with her. It's better to have people who will respectfully and honestly push back and say like, because I'm not in the weeds of the details anymore. And so a lot of times I'm not even the one who's the best to make a decision. I just can kind of hear all the decisions and like come together with it. But it's, I trust the employees that we have hired to make a lot of the decisions that need to happen. They know it better than anybody else. So, yeah.
I think, kind of the complementary nature of our relationship kind of extends the whole executive team. I think like, we got together recently for an executive retreat, and we all took like the Strengths Finder test, evaluation, assessment. And we're all so different. We're all very different people. Like, we're all motivated by different things. And it works well. It all works well together because we're so different, and I think, to your point about Lincoln's band of rivals, I think there's a lot of historical background for that.
Yep. Agreed.
All right. Well, as we bring this to the close, we'd love to talk a little bit about your vision for Motivo and like what you think Motivo will look like a couple of years down the line. What do you wish was different about the industry because of Motivo?
Oh, that's a great question. I love that. Someone was just asking me this, like, where do you think Motivo will be in 5 years? And, I think it would be hard to say like what the company structure looks like several years down the road. But I think what I hope about the world that looks differently because of Motivo is that I hope there are more and better trained therapists, just simply put. We put out a white paper not too long ago that shared that 57% of the people who get a master's degree in counseling or social work never make it through the licensure process, which just, when you think about the fact that mental health care is so needed, it's, there's more access to it than has ever been before. And half of the professionals that come into the space aren't making it through to become licensed. And it's most of the time for very solvable issues. It has to do with like state by state reciprocity. It has to do with, New Jersey just rolled back their virtual supervision rules to, pre-pandemic. Now you have to be in person. This is, supervision is unrelated to the patient. It is just a professional and a professional talking. The idea that can't be done, virtually in today's age, it creates an unnecessary barrier. I drove 2 hours, to get to my clinical supervisor. That doesn't account for the gas time that took me, the time that I couldn't be seeing other patients and making money during that time, the money I spent finding and paying for a clinical supervisor. So those are just like little things that we can do to make it easier. The other thing that I'll say too is that I think that we use our greenest clinicians to serve the most vulnerable populations. And what I mean by that is that we use pre-licensed clinicians who've just graduated and are under supervision to serve the Medicaid and uninsured population. But it's just now beginning to be allowed for commercial insurance. So that means that, my first patient population that I was seeing right out of grad school was chronically homeless adults in Skid Row who were had been homeless for, 10 plus years. I had no idea what I was doing, and I didn't have the clinical supervision support that I needed. I just didn't. So if we're not supporting our clinicians in those early years, they're going to leave. And I think that Motivo has a real opportunity to be a differentiator of, we have some of the best clinical supervisors that I've ever met, people I would have loved to have as my clinical supervisor. And, we have a way for you to meet them, virtually. So I just feel like that's what's exciting to me. What's exciting to you?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of the same. I come to this field as an outsider, and what I can tell you about supervision is it's like horrible and also beautiful. Like, I think it's like, there are many aspects of it that are horrible, like you said. Just like, from what I can see, you graduate school and they just like punch you out in the street. They don't help you at all, right? Like, yeah, bye. Good luck. Good luck out there. And you're like $50,000 in debt or more, and you have to pay for your own supervision out of pocket, and in many cases, and you don't know what any of the rules are, right? Like, that's a summary of the situation when you graduate. And I've been ever since I joined Motivo, I've been like lurking in the therapist subreddit, and it looks hard. It looks really hard to be a therapist. And what a great thing it would be to be supported by someone who actually cares about you. When supervision is not just there to check a box, and when it's actually there to support and like your own personal well-being, to support your like professional development, your knowledge development. I think it's a really beautiful thing. There's no other, I think many other health fields, you have stuff like residency and things like that. But for software engineering, it's like, if you don't find a mentor at your job, good luck, figure it out. And I think it's really nice that there is this structure. There's this official structure in place for you to get the support you need. I just wish it weren't so hostile, right? Like, it's so oppressive. And I think that there are reasons for that. Like, it should be a gatekeeper in the sense of like, you don't want just anyone, being a therapist. But why can't we make it easier for the people who really want to do this and who be good at it?
Yeah, so well said, and really great to have like a non-clinician's vantage point on the problem with that, because it's such a great concept in theory, right? These are mental health professionals that are going to see thousands of patients over the course of their career. Ensuring that they have a couple of years to like learn the ropes and get advice and feedback is a great idea, but because of the way that the industry is set up, it's so often exactly what you said. It's a box to check. I never thought of supervision that way. I thought of it as, I just need another hour and then I need another hour. And it's like, I just need this hour and this hour and this hour. I didn't look at it as like an opportunity to invest in my future clinical self. And I hope it'll be different for other clinicians.
Yeah, I would love to change people's mind about what it could be. Like, I don't want anyone to look at it the way that you just described. And yeah, the only way that we can do that is to make it more affordable and make it more improve the quality of it. And so I think I would love to keep the beautiful parts of it and fix the horrible parts.
Yes, I love it. Oh, what a great note to end on. Well, thanks for telling the world that you like me on LinkedIn. That was very, much needed for me and my ego. And I just appreciate, I would do this with you like every week. Thanks so much.
Yeah, I had a great time. Yeah, I like working with you, Rachel.
Thank you.
I think I would hope that I would not need to tell you that on LinkedIn, because I never will. But I do appreciate you.
I do. I appreciate you too. Awesome. This was fun. And yeah, see you around.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks everyone for coming in.
Yes.
Bye.